Section 1 of Chapter 4 of How to Analyze People on Sight. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. How to Analyze People on Sight Through the Science of Human Analysis. The 5 Human Types. By Elsie Lincoln Benedict and Ralph Payne Benedict. Section 1 of Chapter 4. Chapter 4. The Osseous Type. The Stayer. Men and women in whom the osseous or bony framework of the body is more highly developed than any other system are called the osseous type. This system consists of the bones of the body and makes what we call the skeleton. Just as the previous systems were developed during man's biological evolution for purposes serving the needs of the organism, first a stomach sac, then a freight system in the form of arteries to carry the food to remoter parts of the body, and later muscles with which to move itself about, so this bony scaffolding was developed to hold the body upright and better enable it to defend and assert itself. Man is a creature who, in spite of his height, walks erect. He can do so only by means of the support given him by his bony framework. The human body is like a tall building. The muscles are like the mortar and plaster, the bones are like the steel framework around which everything else is built, and without which the structure could not stand upright. How to know him? Prominent ankles, wrists, knuckles, and elbows are sure signs that such an individual has a large osseous or bony element in his makeup. When you look at any person, you quickly discern whether fat, bone, or muscle predominates in his construction. If fat predominates, he leans towards the alimentive, no matter what other types he may have in combination. If firm, well-defined muscles are conspicuous, he is largely muscular. But if his bones are proportionately large for his body, he has much of the osseous type in his makeup. The raw-boned man. Raw-boned exactly describes the experience of the extreme osseous. See Chart 7. Such a man is a contrast to others in any group and a figure with which all of us are familiar. But that his inner nature differs as widely from others as his external experience differs from theirs is something only recently discovered. As we proceed through this chapter, you will be interested to note how every trait attributed to this type applies with absolute accuracy to every extremely raw-boned, angular person you have ever known. You will also notice how these traits are predominated in every person whose bones were large for his body. Though this type was the last to be classified by science, it is the most extreme of them all. Physical rigidity. An impression of physical rigidity is given by the extreme osseous. Such a man or woman looks stable, unchanging, immovable, as though he could take a stand and keep to it through thick and thin. So vividly do very tall, angular, raw-boned people convey this impression that they are seldom approached by beggars, barked at by street vendors, or told to "step lively." His size looks formidable. The power of his physique is evident to all who look at him. The strength indicated by his large joints, angular hands, and general bulk intuitively warns others to let this kind of person alone. He is therefore unmolested for the most part, whether he walks down the streets of his hometown or wanders the byways of dangerous vicinities. His ruggedness. This type also looks rugged. He reminds us of the rugged Rockies. He appears firm, fixed, impassive, as though everything about him was permanent. Externals are not accidental. They always correspond to the internal nature in every form of life. And it is not accidental that the osseous looks all of these things. He is all of them as definitely as they can be expressed in human nature. The steady man. Of all human types, the osseous is the most dependable and reliable. The phrases "that man is steady," never flies off the handle, always the same, etc., are invariably used concerning those of more than average bony structure. Immovability his keynote. The keynote of the bony man's whole nature, mental, physical, and moral, is immovability. Once he settles into a place of any kind, a town, a home, or even a chair, he is disinclined to move. He does not settle as quickly as other types, but when he does, it is for a longer stay. Think how different he is from others in his psychological trait, and how it coincides exactly with his physiological structure. The fat man lets you make temporary dents in his plans just as you make them in a piece of fat meat. But the bony man is exactly the opposite, for as bone is difficult to twist or turn or alter in any way, it takes a long time and much effort, but once it is changed, it is there for good. The 6-footer. Because any individual's height is determined by his skeleton, extreme tallness is a sign of a larger than average bony structure. The extreme osseous is therefore tall. But you must remember that large joints are more significant than height. Even when found in short people, they indicate a large osseous tendency. Large bones for his body. So bear in mind that any person whose bones are large for his body is somewhat of the osseous type, regardless of whether he is short or tall, and regardless of how much fat or muscle he may have. The large-jointed person, when fat, is an osseous alimentive. A large-jointed man of muscle would be an osseous muscular. The small osseous. A very short person then may be predominantly osseous if his bones are proportionately large for his body. Such an individual is called a small osseous. A head that is high for his body and inclines to be straight up and down goes with the extreme osseous type. See Chart 8. It does not resemble a sphere like the alimentive, it is not kite-shaped like the thoracic, nor square like the muscular. It is higher than any of the others, stands on a longer, more angular neck, and his Adam's apple is usually in evidence. The pioneer type. Like each of the other types, the osseous is a result of a certain environment. Rigorous, remote regions require just such people, and these finally gave rise to his stoical nature. The outposts of civilization are responsible for his evolution. Pioneering, with its hardship, its menacing cold and dearth of comforts, in far countries, at last produced a man who could stand them, who could live through almost anything, and still dominate his surroundings. Not a softy. The osseous does not give way to his feelings. He keeps his griefs, sorrows, ambitions, and most of his real opinions to himself. He is the farthest from a softy of any type. If you desire to know at once what kind of person the osseous is, put the alimentative and thoracic types together and mix them thoroughly. The osseous is the opposite of that mixture. Each and every trait he possesses is one whose exact opposite you will find in one or the other of these first two types. Consistency in types. As we go on in this chapter, you will see why all kinds of people make up the world, for nature has outdone herself in the distinctions between the 5 human types. Each type is made up of certain groups of traits with which we have come in contact all our lives, but which we have never classified. And each set of traits comprising a type has a consistency which nothing less than Mother Nature could have produced. You will be interested to see how accurate are the statements concerning each type, and how they are proven again and again in every type you associate with. Guesswork is no longer necessary in the sizing up of strangers. You can know them better than their mothers know them if you will get these nutshells of facts clearly in your mind and then apply them. His high cheekbones. Cheekbones standing higher than the average are always indicative either of a large thoracic or a large osseous element. If the distance between the cheeks is so wide as to make this the widest section of the face, It is probable that the person is more thoracic than osseous. But if his face is narrow